All right, guys. I'm a little behind on this video. I know I actually taught this in class 2 or 3 days ago. And those of you learning from home right now, I apologize to you for being delayed in getting this to you. But this is going to be a really short video because really I ended up cutting this lesson short. In the last video I had with you guys, I talked about how wasn't a giant fan of the choices your book made for this Mark Twain passage, but I was going to teach it because Twain is an important figure. I mean, he's one of the most important figures in American literature. I did decide to cut the notorious jumping frog of Calaveras County just because I don't feel it has the literary merit that a lot of people do. But I did leave the section about life on the Mississippi because, first of all, I think it's better writing. Second of all, I also believe that with our theme being about talking about the American dream, I think that this piece in a lot of ways encapsulates the transition from the American dream, from the whole, I can go from dirt poor to filthy rich, which, I feel like, I don't think it was, all right, filthy rich, I'm being negative in my connotation, but the idea of, having nothing, coming to America and all of a sudden, having a lot, which was obviously, I believe, possible when you look at the 1700s and then into the early 1800s. I feel like you could, with the sweat of your brow, could actually make a lot happen. Where I feel like that starts to change in this time period. I think the Civil War is the defining factor that completely alters this American dream. And I think that what we see in Life on the Mississippi kind of gives us that direction where I think it's going. Also, I think it reveals some very American qualities that can be, they're not good or bad. They are what they are. Depending on who they're found in, they can be an excellent quality, and some people it can be a really negative one. So I feel like that's worth teaching. So, but beforehand, as we get into this, the book wanted to focus on the use of humor in writing, and I gave a couple of guidelines in my class that aren't in the book. First of all, I feel there's a place for humor in writing. It's a major point of my writing when I write. It is for informal writing purely, in my opinion. I don't think there's a place for it in formal writing, like academic writing. If you're writing an essay in history class about, I don't know, people keep talking about the Insurrection Act right now. If you're writing about that, there's not really a spot for you to throw in some sides and jokes. I mean, that's a formal paper, all right? Now, if you're writing an informal essay where, you're an observational essay, or you're writing what like Twain is doing here, then it's totally acceptable. But that's the first of two things I want to include. The second thing I would include is if you're not funny and you're not good at this, don't throw it in there. Inside jokes that your friends and you think are funny don't work in an essay unless your audience is only your friends. So I believe comedy or humor is a really difficult thing to make work in essays. I think it's great when it does. That's one of Twain's strengths, is he's very good with the humor. And there's a lot of modern day essayists that are really good with that. And it makes their essays go. Chuck Klosterman, David Sedaris. There's several of these guys who can really master the use of humor in their essays. I think that works really well. Your book highlights three particular areas that Twain used, but I think they are common with a lot of people. The first one was incongruity. It says, or a difference in logic or degree. For example, a speaker may use a serious tone to describe ridiculous events, which, that works. If it depends on the audience catching it. It says hyperbole or exaggeration of details, which is good. Also, understatement. Your book doesn't mention that, but understatement would also go with that, which is the opposite, where you downplay things. Kind of similar to incongruity, I guess. And then finally, comic use of languages, funny names, puns, that sort of thing. And again, it all just depends on whether your audience thinks it's funny or not. You're not appropriate language and appropriate delivery. It really depends on your audience. Things that might be okay with one group aren't with another. So you do have to take that into account. All right, so as we get into the excerpt from Life on the Mississippi, which began on page 571, technically, I want to talk about some of the things that I really enjoyed about this. Okay, first of all, it feels like there's some authenticity to this writing. I feel like it's Mark Twain's writing just about his life, and I don't feel like there's a lot of embellishment. I feel like that where there is embellishment, it's meant for, again, the humor perspective. But if the first thing, without even reading any words, when you look at the paragraphs, we start to see those big, long, complex paragraphs. You're also going to see some long run-on sentences that are broken up with semicolons. This is a style choice by Twain. It's also really common in this time period to write this way. Lots of description because these people, there weren't tons of, well, there was no TV or there was no, internet for you to go and look at pictures, and there probably wasn't a lot of actual photographs for a lot of stuff for people. So if you didn't live in this area, if you didn't live on the Mississippi, then this kind of description is what you need. People today do not write this way as much. You can pull up almost any modern piece of fiction that's been written or any modern essays, and the paragraphs are much shorter, the description is much lighter. And again, that is because we're different people. But what you need to do instead of looking at it like, oh my gosh, this is ponderous, is realize the power and the beauty and the talent that came into writing this way. Okay. Now, the first two paragraphs just kind of lay out a scenario for us that I think still exists today, and it's the idea about young people. And he's mentioning the boys, but I think it's the same for girls. Then the desire for adventure, to get away from what you're used to. Nobody wants to stay in their hometown unless you were born in like New York or Boston or something. If you were pretty much anywhere else that's not a major city, and I'd say maybe the top 10 cities, and even kids there sometimes want to get away. But I mean, it's rare for me to find a student that I teach who says, man, I want to live in Mobile, Alabama the rest of my life. It is exceedingly rare. The idea of getting out, becoming your own person, following your own path is a very American trait, and it's a good one. And I feel like this is one of the things that we see the American dream kind of shifting to now that the whole hard work equals success idea is slowly fading. And we're realizing that as our country gets bigger, as the population gets bigger, there's a lot more chance involved with your success or not. But now we get to the idea that I want to get out and make my own way. I want to forge my own path. It's an element. It's a positive side of the rebelliousness that Americans are known for. And by this, I don't mean like armed rebellion and 1776 and that sort of thing. I mean the idea that we want to do things different than it was done before. We don't all decide to go into the exact same field as our parents. We want to do something different. Some of us go in shockingly different directions. Most of the males in my family have been engineers for the last few generations. I, am an English teacher. I'm nowhere close. I was good at math. It was my best subject in school. And I was good at science, and I didn't like English. I was good at English, but I didn't like it. Got to college and completely altered who I was. And a lot of it came from the fact that I wanted to be different. So we see that at the beginning here. We do have the unfortunate mention of minstrel shows, which things don't always age well. When Twain wrote about this didn't have the connotation it does today. And again, probably those of you watching this video don't have any indication of the racist history behind minstrel shows, and they're viewed in a very negative light today. But he mentions people wanting to run away as steamboat captains, or as members of a performing circus or a minstrel show, or even jokingly he says pirates. But the thing all these share in common is the whole idea of escape. And that's what all these boys dream about. Then you get this amazing description, this really long section here about this little sleepy town, port town on the Mississippi, how pretty much nothing's going on. And then everything stops when the steamboat comes in, and everybody gets excited because this is something new. We crave novelty in our lives. We craved it in the 1850s or 1860s when this was written. We crave it today. You get excited when the mail truck comes up. I mean, a lot of us do anyway. I do. I'm a big record collector, and I order records all the time from different places, some of them from overseas, so you never know when they're going to come in. And I'm also very absent-minded, so I forget I've ordered things sometimes. And occasionally something will show up that I forgot all about, and I get thrilled to get it. But then there's the days the mail comes by, and I know sometimes I get stuff, and I'll order Amazon stuff a bunch, which I shouldn't do probably. But then the mail comes, and they just put a few letters in the box and they leave, and I'm like, oh, and I'm let down. And then it's like back to the same old, like lying on the couch and whatever. So we get that same image here for these people when the steamboat arrives. And the kids are all watching the people on the steamboat and dreaming about what it would be like to be that person. And if you'll notice, this paragraph is massive. It takes up the majority of page 571 and all of page 572 up to the very top of 573. So this is a massive paragraph. It's really intimidating for people, but it shouldn't be, okay? Make sure you read all of it, because the description that Twain uses is amazing. He also gives a great description about what steamboats look like, and we've seen replicas of those frequently. I mean, I've ridden on one. Somebody got married on one that I went to a wedding a while back, and it was amazing. And the description here brought me right back to that place. Then we get into this next section about Twain himself, and I'm assuming this is Twain. I don't know much about life on the Mississippi, but I'm assuming this is from his own background. He talks about his dad being a justice of the peace, but him wanting to be a steamboat captain. And he describes all the people in town who, like the minister's son and the liquor distributor's son, and all these people who did go off and work on the steamboats. And it seems like it's a really big deal. He jokes, and this is where some of the humor comes in. He jokingly points out how he thought his dad, as a justice of the peace, had all these powers, which he really didn't, which is, again, something a lot of us as kids did. He also goes into, the naivete of youth, where we start dreaming about these jobs that we think are going to be so magical and amazing, when, as you get older, you realize that they're not as great as you would think. His was, being like a cabin boy on the or a deckhand on a steamboat, which sound like really miserable jobs if you know what they do. But when you're a little kid, you only see that sprinkling of it. It seems like it's a great thing. The idea of dreams, again, something that's very American. We can dream about these jobs. I remember being a little kid, I told my classes I dreamed about being the garbage man, because riding on the back of the truck looked really fun. Plus, it's like you got all this stuff people throw away that you could, that looks really cool that you could keep. I mean, that was my thinking as a little kid. Obviously, today, I know that a garbage man is a very thankless job and not a lot of fun. But I bet riding on the back of that truck still is kind of fun. Although my garbage men don't even do that. They have a motorized thing. There's like one guy that drives it, and that's it. So, I mean, even that part's been removed, right? Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I hope I'm not getting sick. There are so many people dropping right now, and I'm just praying that I'm not. Um, But again, when we get into this section, we're in another really long paragraph that dominates page 573 and over on to page 574, which is the last of the excerpt that we have. Twain's pointing out how kids that got away and worked on the steamboat, how they imagine how proud these people are when they come back. He describes them in their dirty clothes where they've been working and how everyone's jealous, and how all the girls love these guys and stuff. And as an adult, we can look back, or even as soon to be adults, you can look at this and see that's probably not what was going on. That, again, this is the lens of youth coloring things in a crazy way, but it's really interesting to see it, and show again that another very American trait, that of envy. I want to have what he has. Of course, the way it used to work, and I think this is one of the big differences I see in generations, is that it used to be that envy would drive you to better yourself. Now our envy drives us to complain and want to damage others, which I think is a negative thing, stereotype we need to reverse. Um, but Twain talks about that. He even gets off on the boat, and he points out, it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. Which, welcome to adulthood, where you find out all the time what you thought was going to be great it may still be good, but it's not quite what you thought it was going to be. And he closes out really with another whole lesson we could go into if there were a few more paragraphs, but really talking about the value of putting in your dues, paying your dues, putting in your time. The idea that he doesn't immediately begin as a captain. He starts, and he's the low man on the totem pole, and it doesn't seem fun. And that's another thing that I think that some of you watched that Simon Sinek video with me that was so amazing, where he talks about people who are visionary young people who really are excited about a job, and then 6 months in want to quit because they don't feel like they're doing anything. But the fact is that you have to put in time, you have to put in work to rise to these upper levels. And it's another thing that used to be something about our country. Part of our American dream was that work hard, it brings in good dividends. Now, of course, there's a lot more chance thrown in, maybe, but the fact is still, that's the way it should be. You put in your time, you work, you start in the mailroom. You got to go. You don't get a job as president of the company. You have to start doing the low end stuff first. It's something that's kind of sad about people today, just not wanting to, realizing you have to do the menial low end stuff a lot first. I mean, even if it's in a professional career like being a teacher, if you want to go into teaching advanced classes like IB program at Davidson, you don't get to do that straight out of college. I mean, you start teaching ninth grade beginning reading, and you struggle with that, and some people find that's their niche and they love it, but others, you have to work your way up to the places you want to be. And we see the beginnings of that lesson here in that last paragraph, but of course, it cuts off and we don't get to see the rest of it. So again, this is made up of a couple of short paragraphs, on the beginning and end, combining two massive paragraphs that really are used as descriptors. But the description is not just to paint a picture; it's really about making you see the world that Twain inhabited and see how people felt, and then draw your own experiences from it. Even though none of us grew up in this time period, our youth for most of us is very similar. All right. Okay, well, that's this. The humor section we talked about would show up a lot more in the frog story, but guys, I had tried to like this story all my life. I had to read it when I was young, and I thought it was stupid, and I had to. I read it again before I was going to teach it, and I just cannot get into it. The dialect usage, which Twain is always patted on the back for, absolutely irritates me no end, especially when I have to read it out loud. It just is not something I enjoy. Um, so if you'd like to read it, it's there. It's well written. Mark Twain is not a bad writer. It's just this is not my particular thing. Okay. As we close this up, there's gonna be another couple of days delay before this next video. This next video is for something that is definitely my thing, and that is going to be To Build a Fire by Jack London. Now, this naturalism is my thing. Okay, Twain here, not really dealing with naturalism as much. But when we get back into it, like what we did with Stephen Crane, when we get back to Jack London and naturalism, we'll be right back in my wheelhouse. And I love this story. So it's a long story though. It's going to be a 2 to 3 day slog for us. So I will post that video later, but I will get it to you. It might be in two parts. It might be in one. If it's in one, it's going to be a longer section because it is one of the longer stories in this book. So, but I still love it. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you are too. All right, guys. Well, that'll close up Twain. I know we didn't focus on the story as much as we do in some videos, but I think I was able to establish, one of our main issues with theme, and that's really talking about how the American dream is changing. Remember, this particular unit, was about the death of the dream, what caused it, and we start to see that even in the way attitudes change with the young in Twain's writing versus attitudes of the young if we were to go back 20 years from this time period to the early 1800s. Okay. All right, well, guys, have a great day. Today's a Thursday for me, so chapel day. That's the jacket, and getting ready to get going there. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. Several more students have been pulled out on quarantine, and I hope you guys that are watching this who are in that situation are safe. I hope you're feeling well, and if there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to contact me. Okay. All right, guys, have a wonderful day.